Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final Goblins and Growlers Podcast of 2024. I am Brandon Dingus at Way of Brandalore, and with me is Inver, and you can talk about yourself.
I'm Inver, and I'm supplanting Josh's co-host.
Apparently,
So good to see you all.
apparently, it'll actually be a real shame when Josh comes back because this two-person layout on the video podcast actually works out really well.
He's going to mess up our layout. We have to cut him, Brandon. It's
Yeah.
obvious.
Yeah, Josh really meant to be here, but he was gonna have to duck out on his family who was coming in, and we didn't really want to make him have to do that over the weekend. So we're like, well, we'll do it without you. It's fine.
Listen, Josh has made his priorities clear. Obviously, his family and DMMD is which is way more important than Goblins and Growlers. So, you know what, Josh? Heard. The audience has heard.
Yeah, if you want to talk to Josh about this, you can find him at Black Cloak DM on Blue Sky and on Discord. Speaking of the Discord, join the Goblins and Growlers Discord, bit.ly/Goblin Discord. But anyway, what we have planned for today is to do a little retrospective on 2024 and a prospective on 2025. Longtime listeners of the podcast may recall that over the years, Josh and I have struggled to kind of try to find ways to do special event episodes, whether that's for Halloween or Christmas or the end of the year. The first year, I think we did the Jeepers Awards, where we went over our best interviews from the year and we gave a completely fabricated, not physical award to the interview we liked the best. Last year we did a retrospective, and I think this year we're going to do a retrospective again, but also looking forward to 2025. But maybe if we're on the stick for 2025, the Jeepers Awards may make a comeback in 2025.
Is that kind of like a clip show at the end of a sitcom where they've just run out of material? So it's like, here's the best moments of.
No, it was not. It wasn't a clip show. It was actually probably worse than a clip show because it was us talking about stuff without clips from it. Because of course, doing a clip show and an audio podcast would mean I would have to like go in and edit everything and then put it back in just as though it were video, and I didn't really want to do that, so we just talked about it instead. It was not high quality production.
Okay, I'm thinking if we do an audio clip show, we need to use like some warm, grainy, vinyl sounding audio just atop it so that they
Wax
know when it's
cylinders.
past Brandon and which one is future Brandon.
We'll just use a harp and use that as the audio trigger for it. But yeah, anyway, TLDR, Josh isn't here. He's got stuff going on, but he'll be back for the next one until he tells us he can't make it.
Or will he?
Yeah. I mean, that's true. But it's fine. It's the both of us. We're going to get through this and we're all going to have a good time. And then be sure to check out the deep dives that are associated with this episode on the patreon.com/goblins growlers, because we're going to be doing some behind the curtain conversations about what sort of our plans are for Goblins and Growlers and the Goblins and Growlers podcast just as a whole going into 2025. So hopefully that's stuff that you find interesting, but hop onto the Patreon and support us with that, because we'll talk about that kind of stuff too. So let's talk about 2024 and what were some of the things in the tabletop space that we were paying attention to, things that were happening. Like, what was the big deal? Because like comparing 2024 to 2023 is really just kind of like, I'm immediately thinking like crickets almost, because in 2023 we started really strong with the OGL controversy, which I never get tired of talking about. And again, longtime listeners of the podcast know it's something I love to bring up all the time because it was so stupid. But so that sort of overshadowed the entire rest of the year until we get to like, I don't know, like Q4, when they're really serious about talking about the 2024 rules refreshes that came out this year. And then, in between there was stuff like Tales of the Valiant, like Project Black Flag, stuff like that. So there was like a steady drip of a lot of stuff going on. And if you compare the overall tabletop news from last year to this year, I have a really hard time thinking about like what were the major things that were going on.
It's difficult for me to pinpoint anything either. I mean, that drama just took over everything. And it was like all of this year was just spent trying to get back on track. And I
Hmm.
think with like certainly that drama did spark a lot of other companies to try and figure out what does this industry look like without
Hmm.
Wizards of the Coast as a focal piece. And I think we got a lot of new ideas, maybe not completely fleshed out ideas, but new ideas for different ways to move to a different system. Ultimately, I think 2024 has reminded us that everyone is capable of forgiving wizards
Hmm.
for anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they were kind of shamed and bullied into doing I guess I'll call it the right thing, because I feel like you put your system out there in a way that it's publicly consumable and reusable for people, to the point that a whole sort of cottage industry has been created on the back of it. And then you come in there and we're like, well, we're changing the rules. And if you want to keep doing this, you're going to have to start giving us lots of money for it. I think I can classify that objectively as the wrong thing. So Wizards doing the right thing, the unexpected thing, by putting 5e out into Creative Commons, was just bizarre. It was just bizarre. And like, it's so bizarre that here we are almost 2 years later talking about it still.
Well, we got the new 2024/2025 books as
Hmm.
well, which could have been the wrong thing again, right? They could have
Yeah.
entirely just created a sixth edition and released it that way. But
Hmm.
instead, we got can we just call it 5.5?
I mean, I've been avoiding that just because I always hate sort of the 0.5 of it, because it just seems so arbitrary.
You're
But I
wondering what
mean,
happened to 0.1 through 4?
yeah, like where are our lines of demarcation on the iteration there? But it is. I almost feel like if we have to put a number on it, this is really more like a 5.25 rather than a
You would.
5.5. I mean, I don't think there's enough difference there to be like, yeah, it's a half step. I think this was largely
I mean, they
caused.
have reworked entire concepts to fit new thematic preferences for society. So that would
Yeah,
kind of count. It hasn't been an entire reworking, which would
yeah,
then consist of sixth edition, right?
yeah. Maybe this is where we're getting hung up on the difference here, because you're saying they're reworking lots of stuff for thematic reasons. Now, if it were more of a crunch rework rather than a fluff rework, I would probably be more inclined to be like, yeah, this is different. But I don't think like the race versus species thing is necessarily. It's a meaningful change, but it's a meaningful change in a societal way rather than a mechanical way.
One of the bigger changes was the taking away of the gods and from first level, right? First level
Mhm.
clerics don't have to pick a god anymore. Everything gets shuffled off to what is it? Is it third level when you start making the subclass?
I think so.
Normally, it's second level when you start thinking about subclasses, and then third level is when you actually pick a subclass. And I think it's during that picking where you actually
Mhm.
choose a deity, which always kind of
Yeah,
read backwards.
level 3 is your junior year. Your freshman and sophomore years, you don't have to have a major yet. You just that's when you're shopping around, you're experimenting with all kinds of other gods.
Listen,
Uh
maybe Dionysus is a good fit. Who
yeah,
knows?
exactly. Exactly. So I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No. I mean, like, there is some kind of crunch to it because there's different ways that the characters are progressing that is markedly different from the original version,
Mhm.
previous version. But I can see your point in that it's not an entire reworking of all the stats.
Mhm.
Sort of getting rid of
Yeah.
getting rid of challenge ratings makes me want to push back on that a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I think it's just it's open to interpretation, and that's just where I've landed. And maybe if I sat down and read like every word in the new PHB and DMG, and then
You
read
didn't
every
read
word.
every page, Brandon?
No, I didn't. As is made clear by the person who commented on the YouTube video that we mischaracterized how magic items were being doled out to people.
Wait, we
And-
have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel. It's Goblins and Growlers on YouTube. Just search for us, you'll find us. We
Yes.
put the video of the podcast out every 2 weeks, and then I'm also working on taking distinct things that we talk about and chopping them down into more digestible chunks, also uploaded to the YouTube channel. So subscribe. We've got 142 subscribers as of right now. I would love to see that by, I don't know, end of Q1 be like 200. That would be nice.
Stop giving our audience meaningful objectives to work towards. They're already subscribed.
They've got to know their KPIs in this situation.
Everyone, the most important part of that sign off on all of our shows is tell a friend. So, because word of mouth is the most powerful marketing anyone can not buy.
I thought for a minute that you were going to say it was the best Ludacris album. Yeah.
No, that's your line. I won't take it from you.
She just rolled her eyes when we were talking about that before we started recording. It was disheartening, to say the least.
I'm glad that all of you are ready for dadhood. My puns are not there yet.
What were we talking about? Oh, this is going to be
what has happened in 2024.
Yeah. So anyway, so the rule, like, I don't want to contradict past me, because I think past me was like, hey, this is really more of a marketing glow up for 5e 10 years in, to keep it relevant and keep it out there for people. And I think to a certain extent that's true, but I've also said, like, there are some positive changes here, like especially the socially oriented stuff. I think it's good, just given tabletop's history as a hobby, for folks for companies to be like proactively inclusive, especially now that like inclusivity has kind of, like, inclusive culture has sort of taken D&D from Wizards and Hasbro. And that's not to say that they were being, I can say they were being actively uninclusive, because of all the bullet points that people are yelling at me right now about stuff like the Hattazy and Spelljammer, and
type it in the YouTube comment and then follow and then like it.
Yeah. And or the 30 years of slurs against Roma people in Ravenloft and things like that.
Don't like that part.
Yeah. So yeah, okay. Yeah, they did actively do stuff that they shouldn't have done. But they're being dragged kicking and screaming into sort of a more inclusive and accepting 21st century, just because of how the community has grown and changed. And that's reflected too in, like, I think a lot of people who work at Wizards of the Coast now, who grew up with D&D in the 90s and the early 2000s, and have helped pull it in a different direction. And I think this year probably was the culmination of the last sort of 10 or 12 years of social movement on D&D, because you're actually seeing, like, the audience is affecting the product. And I think that's positive.
I do too. And just to contest your 5.25 number, I'm going to go with 5.5.5.
Okay. So if we round up, that's 6.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah. I guess the other big thing this year that's just off the top of my, there's maybe like 2 other big things this year that I can think of off the top of my head. I will say proactively, if you can think of a big thing that we missed, put it in the comments or put it on the Discord. And as always, you can tell me I'm stupid, but I think thing 1 is the actual release of Tales of the Valiant, because we got drips of what it was going to look like for a good while, and then it finally came out. And then I think I'm probably focusing a little bit too much on my thoughts and emotions if I say that, as expected, many people were disappointed with the result because it was too close to 5e. I think people were surprised that it ended up being so close to 5e, but go ahead.
What do you think the actual solution is for that, though? I mean, because we even considered it, right? We write a lot of adventures, and pivoting away from D&D, especially when the OGL happened, was a big question. But we have this group, we have this audience that have built all their characters. They have a arsenal of 20 or so OCs that they want to run at games. They're all based on D&D. So how do you transpose their love of the game that they're used to playing into a new system, and that's really
Yeah.
difficult.
Well, with something like Tales of the Valiant, I think it'd probably be fairly easy. It would certainly be easier than if you were doing Pathfinder, even like
Well,
Pathfinder
right.
2.0.
Because they're a corollary, right? They run 1-to-1 with 5e. It's cross compatible.
I mean, it's close enough to 1-to-1 because and this is me being anecdotal because I can't remember where the data came from, but Josh and I think ended up at like, yeah, like Tales of the Valiant is really like 85% 5e, and then there's some sauce on the top of it that differentiates it. I think if you're going to do that, I think Tales of the Valiant would be super easy to port stuff into with like minimal issue. But like I've lost the thread of your question a little bit, but I think what you were getting at was like,
Well,
what's
you
the
were saying
solution
how
there?
people were complaining that this was too like 5e.
Yeah.
And my argument
Mhm.
is that you can't respond to a crisis like this, which is with something that is markedly different from 5e.
Mhm.
Because if you were to do that, then you would be asking people to learn an entirely different system as
Yeah.
opposed to just adopting yours instead of
Yeah. It's
Wizards.
like outlawing cars to try to get people to adopt jetpacks. It's just way too different, way too complex. Um yeah, like I think it's good business sense to keep it as close to 5e as possible. Like I don't think I have ever been on the record as saying it was like a dumb business decision, but I'm differentiating between a business decision and a creative decision because I think rightly or wrongly, we as a community were led to believe that they were going to be doing something more different. And I've always talked about how I really
Hmm.
appreciate creative swings. Like, even if it turns out badly, like, I really appreciate when somebody takes the swing to try to do something really different. And they didn't. And that's fine because if I were in their shoes with, and we'll probably talk in a few minutes about Cobalt Press's revenues for 2024 because Wolfgang Bauer, the CEO, was very open in a blog post that came out like 2 days ago from when we're recording this, just about where the company's year-over-year finances were and what some of the causes for that were and what they were projecting for the future. Like, you get like, you can't, sometimes you can't afford to make art for art's sake, right? You gotta do something that pays the bills, and that's something that we run into constantly with our very small business that we run. And sometimes you just have to make sure the bills get paid.
We're
And
cozy, not
yeah,
small.
yeah, yeah, we're a cozy business. um but with people who are trying to like, and this is more of an emotional argument, but talking about people wanting to get away from D&D, I say, because a lot of times you run into people who don't want to play D&D just because it's D&D, because they're just anti-wizards, and that's fine. Like, that's a perfectly valid stance to take, I think.
Or
But
I've even had a bunch of people who have been apprehensive to play just because it's overwhelming, that there's
mhm,
just too much for them to get into, and they've never played tabletop games before, and they don't
mhm,
understand what all these numbers are. And I'm
yeah,
sure that there's a simpler solution out there for them to
I
get started with.
yeah, I mean, I think that's the fault of the teacher sometimes, though,
Mm,
because at the
careful.
at the well, I mean, at the end of the day, what do you need to know to play D&D? You need to know six numbers,
Roll
and
that d20. Just
yeah,
roll it. I'll tell you what to add.
yeah, you need to know six numbers and have a D20, and maybe some other die if you want to be really precise about your damage and stuff like that. I think it being overwhelming is perfectly valid, but that's not something that Tales of the Valiant solves, or whatever, because it's going to be just as complex.
Right.
Like, I don't like, but if somebody is coming to me and saying, I don't want to play D&D, I want to find a different system because D&D is too complex, my response is going to be what I just told you. And it's like, well, actually, I don't think it's complex. I think you might be overcomplicating it. And I think the explanations you're getting in the published material probably isn't as concise and clear as it could be. Because I've looked at Lasers and Feelings, and it's simple. It's got like two stats, and you roll like a 2d6 or whatever. And I still have to sit and read it and look at it for a few minutes to figure out what it is, where with D&D, with 5e, I can just say, again, here's a character sheet I have made for you. I auto-generated this. You just have to know these 6 numbers up here at the top. I can help you with everything else. I mean, what gets me when people are anti D&D, it's when they're just sort of wizards. I think Josh talked to somebody while we were at PAX. I don't know who they were, which
I've
is
had
good.
a conversation like that recently.
Yeah. And I don't remember who they were, but Josh went to talk to them and was just sort of chatting and found out that, they also do like tabletop stuff and like run games and things like that. And he was like, oh, well, we do a lot of, mainly 5e, just because that's sort of the gateway drug. It's the easiest way to get people into this because it's got so much brand recognition. And the person was just like, well, not in sort of like a sort of a shitty Mean Girls kind of way. They weren't like, oh, it's we don't want to mess with 5e. But Josh told me that the sense he got from that was like they just don't want to be involved with anything Wizards of the Coast. And I can get that, but also at the same time, Wizards of the Coast took this thing that they made a lot of money off of, that other people have made a lot of money off of, and now made it free for anybody to use. So you can use it and you're not actually giving any money to Wizards of the Coast. And it's probably the easiest way to get people into tabletop.
And if Tales of the Valiant is 85% the same core mechanics and rules, are we still even really using D&D mechanics? Have we gotten to a point in society where there are enough derivations of the original content to qualify this as an original work?
Are you ship of Theseusing the D&D rules?
Absolutely, absolutely I am. Because I haven't read the OGL recently. I don't want to. But one of the caveats to using the SRD is that you disclose that you're using it within anything that you publish, that you harken back to the original author, right? And this kind of diffusion of the IP makes me think that, well, maybe no one actually needs to do that, just because there's so many derivatives open at this point.
Well, Tales of the Valiant operates under the Black Flag reference document. And when Josh was talking to their COO at Gen Con, he was very specific about, like, when Josh was like, oh yeah, like, I've read through the SRD for Tales of the Valiant, and the COO was like, whoa, wait a minute. That is it. It is not an SRD. That's a WotC thing. It is the BFRD, the Black Flag reference
Take
document.
that acronym out of your mouth right now, sir. How dare you?
Exactly. I think Josh will apologize, but they were like, oh yeah, everybody does it. Don't worry. It's just like, it's my job. It's my job to point it out.
We just like to slap them when they do.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think if you're using anything, because they've released that under their own OGL basically, and if you create anything specifically for Tales of the Valiant, you have to disclose that you're using the Black Flag reference document. I believe, I don't have it right in front of me, but that's what I remember. But they got the backbone of it from the Creative Commons 5e, right? So, well, because remember, like, when you publish third-party materials based on the SRD, OGL SRD, there was that whole 15, 16 bullet point thing that you had to put in all of your publications. And I've had many a layout of our books ruined by having to find a spot to put that thing. But now that 5e is under Creative Commons, you just have to add two really short sentences somewhere that is basically just saying, hey, this is used under the Creative Commons license of X, Y, or Z.
I am really liking the resurgence of open licenses, because even looking at Morkborgs, it's so simple, and it's really nice to see, because part of this licensing model is what gets people writing and publishing new things. So,
well, that was the big thing about the whole OGL bullshit, and it's the same thing that is happening to a lot of other sort of creative venues out there, like like for example, automotive content channels on YouTube right now. Like there are a lot of them that have been very popular, like Donut Media is an example, and they get bought out by investment firms who want to have a profitable business, and then people who are not creatives start making the decisions for the creatives in an effort to get higher margins on things. And that leads to a downward spiral. And with OGL, it was not the creatives at Hasbro who were driving that, hey, why are we letting people use our stuff for free and create content and create their own industry based off of it. It was not creatives saying that. It was people who wear suits and have calculators for their job and make decisions about cutting people. And you know, we saw where it went because the community rose up, because the whole reason D&D has had a resurgence in the last, 10 years is because of this ability of third-party creators to do Wizards' job for them and release an absolute glut of content that's compatible with this system. Everybody makes money this way.
They just don't make enough money from those darn VTTs.
Yeah. Well, that'll change soon, probably. I will say, you know what? I'll say this. I didn't have this written down on the show notes, but I am looking forward to exploring the Sigil VTT more and seeing how it functions as an actual VTT and not just a dungeon design tool, which is what the only thing we saw it used for.
I was about to say, my 2024 news is that I'm really excited about the state of tech for all of the VTTs out there. Foundry looks great. Alchemy looks great. I am not super hopeful for Sigil, but we'll find out. We'll find out when it launches, right? And I can tear it apart.
I mean, yeah, I just really want to see it as a finished product. Like I am withholding judgment on it because I think it could go a couple of different ways. Because on the one hand, it's got that Hasbro money behind it. And on the other hand, it's got that Hasbro money behind it. So maybe they're throwing money at it and that's coming at the expense of user experience and quality. I don't know. Like,
do we know where it's going to be released?
D&D Beyond?
That's what I'm assuming.
Oh yeah. I mean, they wouldn't have bought D&D Beyond from Fandom if that wasn't their plan.
Yeah, it's not like they would make an entirely new app that people then have to go and buy all the rule books out of, right? They wouldn't. They would do that.
Yeah.
Again.
It'll be in some D&D Beyond ecosystem.
I am excited for it. I think that at least with the cost of materials getting more expensive potentially, that people will likely be migrating over to virtual. So we might see a resurgence there. And talking about like stuff that we're looking forward to / not looking forward to in 2025, like that was another thing that Wolfgang Bauer was talking about in his State of Play blog from the 17th. Because like I said, he's going through all the sort of the updates that Kobold Press did, like they had their biggest Gen Con yet. And then gets into finances, and then like toward the end he's like, what are our post-holiday blues? He's like, well, we printed most of our books in China for years, and our last US hardcover printer left the country in 2023, and the incoming administration has promised to raise tariffs by 10% on goods imported from China. He's like, we're looking for loopholes, but current events are going to affect our costs going forward. I don't like it, but I don't have any control over it. We're in touch with printers outside China, but most of those are even more expensive. So what this means is everything for tabletop, like physical production, is just going to be more expensive after January 20th, most likely. And really what we're seeing a lot of people saying now is there's no way around it. It's just going to happen. You're standing on the beach and the wave is coming and you just have to surrender to it, because the CEO of Steve Jackson Games, I talked about this like a last episode or the episode before, was saying the same thing. If you want to hear us do a deep dive on tariffs, you can go ahead and subscribe to our Patreon at, it's under my name, patreon.com/goblins and growlers.
It's just
goblins, growlers, we ate the and.
Yeah, we ate the and. But as we're recording this, that hasn't come out yet, but it'll come out before this episode's released. But anyway, the CEO of Steve Jackson Games was saying the same thing. She was like, yeah, we're looking at some other options like in South America, India, or whatever, but that's all going to come with its own kind of expense. So the stars may be aligning in 2025 to start pushing more and more people to digital. Like it really started during COVID, where digital play became more and more common, and you started to lose that stigma that people had of like, oh, I like to play in person. I don't really have a lot of fun
I
with it.
ban laptops at my table.
Yeah, and all my players have to put their phone in a bowl when they come into my house, like some digital key party, and then you get somebody else's phone at the end of the night.
No, I hate it. A lot of people I was talking to at PAX had the same kind of impression as well. Like I didn't hear, as far as I know, and YouTube comments can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't read YouTube comments, so haha. As far as I know, we might be one of the few cozy publishers who do live events en masse as much as we do. And
Yeah.
everyone I was talking to who was like a GM or they ran a GM connection company, most all of their games were online or virtual.
Yeah, I mean, even the events companies that we know, like in this area, one of them is pretty much strictly online, and it's set up to it's set up so that GMs and players can get connected and then potentially run games online, as opposed to anything in person. And then there are some other ones that run it in person, but they have an entirely different model than us. But I take your point.
I'm just saying there's more of an appetite for GMs to run online anyway. So all hail the new digital dominance based off of tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. But yeah, I definitely see that as something that's going to be pushing people more and more toward digital. And it's going to be something that ends up really helping out places like WotC.
I don't know how to feel about that. I'm conflicted. I'm also really surprised that Kobold is struggling, to be honest. Like, I know you want to talk about their finances, so maybe we could dig into that a bit.
Well, I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that they're struggling.
He might be.
Yeah, they're not doing as well year over year as they could. And that was really the point that Wolfgang was making. You get into it, and let's see here. Hang on. I just had
You can't repeat a successful Kickstarter at over $1 million a year. I can understand that. I'm sure Tales of the Valiant, it was a unique niche. It came out at a great time, but after the Steam was kind of taken away with OGL going Creative Commons, it would be difficult to kind of keep that trajectory going, especially if people are forgiving wizards like we all are.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see, I've got the numbers up in front of me now. He's like, yeah, Kickstarter revenue is the backbone of the company. I've always said I've had issues with companies that put they use Kickstarter as their business model. That annoys me. Just because you've essentially become a pre-order company at that point, which I guess is fine if you want to sort of test the market for something. So that makes sense. But it's always bothered me, right? But their revenue declined because Kickstarter is like 45% of their revenue. Kickstarter revenue, it was 1.1 million in 2024, which is like half of what it was in 2023. But again, like they weren't gonna the big win off of that Tales of the Valiant Kickstarter, that was going to be very difficult to overcome. So in a way, they were sort of the authors of their own terrible year over year because they peaked and now they got to peak again.
It's a lot of pressure. I couldn't imagine trying to top something like that.
Yeah, I couldn't either. Especially like, I don't know what the numbers are like in terms of like what Tales of the Valiant is bringing in for them at this point, right? Because like they got a big payout from Kickstarter to do the production and stuff on it, but Kickstarter takes something like 30%, 20-30%, something like that. But they're like a big player, so maybe they negotiated something smaller than that with Kickstarter. But like, how much money did they actually see from that? Kobold Press actually has like a relatively small staff. for the amount of stuff that they do, because they handle a lot of stuff, if I recall correctly. As with most publishers in this space, it's like a lot of contract work and stuff. So
right.
their overhead is lower. It's most of it's variable cost. But yeah, he say like 2024 only seems like a struggle for them because 2023 was just so damn good.
I guess that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I mean, for a private company, yeah, it's a great problem to have. For a public company, not so much. Because then you're setting expectations with investors and stuff like that. And they're going to be like, no, more money.
Why don't number go up?
Yeah, number must go up.
Number must go up always.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
I hate this capitalist hellhole sometimes.
So yeah, so that was interesting. I really appreciate him being really transparent about the finances of the company, right? Because like that's way more than he needed to say, and I just think it's interesting that he broke a lot of that stuff down. I have never been like the biggest fan of Kobold Press, and I don't mean that in like a mean way or anything. It's not like
Why
I don't
not,
like
Brandon?
It's not that I don't like Kobold Press or anything like that. They had just not done anything that really stood out to me as, oh, I got to check this out. You know, it just felt like a lot of like, all right, here's some more 5e stuff. Here's some more 5e stuff. Maybe I wasn't digging into it enough. You know, like to me, the biggest bit of notability that they had was that Wolfgang Bauer was their, you know, founder and CEO, because he's such a big name in tabletop. But Tales of the Valiant, you know, I should look more at that. I should dig in.
Yeah, I want to buy a
it.
copy. I think we should do a special episode for our listeners and viewers, and maybe dig into what Tales of the Valiant can offer them.
Yeah, I was actually planning on buying a copy of Tales of the Valiant at PAX Unplugged, but
hey, Wolfgang, if you're listening.
Yeah, exactly.
We are not currently sponsored by Wizards of the Coast, so if Kobold Press would like some free press, we're more than happy to.
Yeah.
We're more than happy to do so, just for the low price of a free copy of your books. That's all.
Yeah. And, you know, funny enough, when we do episodes with Dungeons and Dragons in the title, they always do better than almost anything else that we do. But I would be happy to try a series of episodes on Tales of the Valiant. But no, like well,
here's a hack, Brandon. You just have to title it, it's not D&D, it's
yeah. I'll tell this story again, which irritates me every time I tell it. But when I was trying to start up some more regular stuff on our YouTube channel a while back, and I was like researching other tabletop creators on YouTube to see what was hitting and what wasn't, and it was like right after all the OGL stuff, and somebody was like, oh, D&D is on death's door after this or whatever, and I watched the video and I was just like, oh, this is bullshit. So I commented like, what a crazy clickbait headline, like this is absolutely not true for these reasons. And the person, like the channel owner, actually responded to me in the comments, which I give them a lot of credit for. They were like, yeah, but I have to title them like this so people will click on it. And I was like, well, I appreciate your honesty, if nothing else, and I can respect that. At least you're not trying to blow smoke.
At least you're not trying to defend an indefensible position.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking at our show notes again. And I think the other stuff that we need to look forward to in 2025, the stuff I've written down, one of them is the 2024 Monster Manual that will be coming out in February of 2025. Woo! Yeah, I'm excited for that to come out so we can be done with the rules refresh, and as a community, we can finally start like seeing those 3 books as something holistic. And really starting to see how they change the way the game is played.
Whoa. You're not looking forward to the starter package that they're going to release shortly after that?
No, not really. I mean, I'm interested in it because it's like supposed to be using the characters from the 1980s Dungeons and Dragons animated series as part of it. But that's mainly because I'm happy to see that show starting to get the the recognition in the community that it deserves. Like there was a free adventure that Wizards released on D&D Beyond like a month or two ago. I actually think it's a series of free adventures that they're releasing, and they all have the characters, like the grown-up versions of the characters from the D&D cartoon from the 80s.
That's really cute. That's a nice nostalgia play by them too.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, once the monster manual comes out, it's about, like you were talking about, challenge ratings changing / going
We'll
away.
see. We'll see what they do with challenge ratings. Who knows? It was there,
Yeah.
and then it wasn't in the last Dungeon Master's Guide and Player's Handbook. So we'll find out.
Yeah. And
I'm excited for the 80+ monsters they're adding to it, which look mostly like derivations of currently existing monsters, but I'll get down with an arch hag. That sounds like a good time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe we'll get surprised. Like, I always like to say, I say this at work when I'm talking about like trusting people to live up to what they say they were going to do, like empowering people to do something. I'm like, you always got to just trust that somebody's going to get something done correctly and give them the opportunity to disappoint you with a poor performance, because then you can coach them on it. And I feel like once the monster manual comes out in February, we can take a look at the whole thing. We can take a look at the rules refresh as one big update, and then we can judge whether or not it was really worthwhile additions or changes to the game. Because I think looking at it piecemeal, like we have to do, and I understand why they have to release things the way they have to release things, but it's just difficult to get a full picture of it. It's like one of those things where, like, a historical event happens and it's really like a long time after before you can really sort of assess the like the impact that it has. Like, I remember I was in college when 9/11 happened, and I remember like the following year I was working on the school newspaper, and somebody was like, well, I think we're going to make the whole front page like the anniversary of 9/11. And then several of us were like, yeah, but like other stuff's going to happen. Like other stuff's happening. Like it shouldn't just be 9/11. And that's an instance of just sort of my youthful naivete and arrogance, is like, oh yeah, no, like you have to have some perspective on this. You can't judge the event right in the moment and then move on. And that's, I am certainly not comparing the 2024 rules release to 9/11.
This is a spicy take, Brandon.
Yeah, this should have been behind the Patreon paywall. But yeah, flame spells can't melt steel beams. But it is one of those things. It is one of those things where we're not gonna have perspective on this until at the earliest, probably like mid to late 2025.
I am excited for it. I hope, like a rug, it will tie the room together, and we can see the vast tapestry and complexity that Wizards was going for. I always love a good monster manual. It is my favorite book out of the three. So let's go. Let's check it out.
Yeah. And then the other main thing I'm looking forward to is that 2-book Forgotten Realms guide that they're putting out. I'm actually very excited for this, even though I'm on the record multiple times in multiple locations that I'm so tired of everything being Forgotten Realms, Sword Coast. But Wizards has done a really good job of showcasing a lot of the other settings that they have, like including putting Greyhawk in the new DMG and everything.
Maybe we'll get a Dark Sun refresh, Brandon.
I doubt it. I doubt it. But it is interesting, like we said in the DMG episode, that they mentioned Dark Sun not too long ago, like as just a sort of blink and you miss it kind of reference. But the 2 source books, and Josh and I talked about these, is one is like new player options and it's a player focused book, and then another one's a campaign guide. And I'm very excited for this just because the first campaigns I ever played in were in Forgotten Realms back in the 90s. I have the big giant like 2-phase Forgotten Realms map. For those of you watching on video, indulge me for a moment.
Oh my goodness. I didn't ask him to do this. This is all him.
Yeah. I've got my Forgotten Realms campaign setting box set from 1994 that has all the junk in it. And I'm not going to open it up on camera because there's way too much stuff in here. It'll probably fall out. But That I'm hoping to get the same level of information in these two books that we got in that Forgotten Realms guide, and we're not going to.
Yeah, no. Why would you set that goalpost up for them to fail?
Because I'm a hopeful person. I'm a very hopeful person.
Okay.
Because
Well, that's what we'll call it.
yeah, just there's always going to be more in the box sets than there can be in just a 2-book release. But I guess I'm heartened. Like maybe this is where my optimism is coming from. I'm heartened that they're like, oh, this can't just be done in 1 book. We have to do 2 books. So they at least recognize that there's a lot there that they need to provide. So it's hopeful. I mean, it's my bright spot in the otherwise sort of anemic release schedule for Dungeons and Dragons for 2025, just because there's not a whole lot there that's exciting me, like the starter set, like we talked about.
Dragon Anthology, no.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I do very much like that they released the anthology books, because now they're
putting the dragons and the Dungeons and Dragons. They had to.
Their habit now is to release 1 anthology book a year, and I think that's great, because not all of us have time for campaigns, and they need to get, like, even though we have a really strong third-party market for one-shots, for modules and things like that, Wizards got to get some of that money for themselves too. So I'm glad that they're recognizing that there needs to be shorter form content that's put out there, because as much as everybody loves Curse of Strahd, it takes a long time to finish Curse of Strahd.
Bro, when I found out that the original concept for Curse of Strahd was to pull tarot cards and generate an adventure for a 1-shot for Halloween, I lost my fucking mind. I'm like, I spent 8 hours alone preparing for the Amber Temple, and you're telling me I would have had to do this on the fly?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But I'm, like I said, I'm optimistic for the 2 Forgotten Realms books, and they're both coming out on the same day too, which is like good and bad, because it avoids what we're dealing with the 2024 rules refresh and like the 2-3 month gap between every release. But at the same time, it means in 2025 our official releases for WotC stuff are February, July, October, and November. So really there's only like 4 release dates for D&D stuff. So I hope you like Magic, because I bet there's probably more Magic releases. But again, and I'll show off this nice little candle that I got as a Christmas present the other day, but I'm being optimistic prime about the Forgotten Realms WotC releases.
What a delightful nerd you are, Brandon.
Yeah.
I know we have a couple more minutes to wrap this up, but what are your predictions for 2025? Any new drama you think is going to get stirred up?
I don't know if there's any new drama that's going to get stirred up. I think stuff's going to cost more.
Yeah.
I think Daggerheart's probably not going to be as popular as they maybe think it will.
What makes you say that, Brandon?
I mean, all right, first of all, I can't remember what I have and haven't said actually on recordings about.
You should just start from the beginning, because I'm sure the listener right now has completely forgotten your last cutting remark towards Daggerheart.
Yeah, I will read what I wrote in the show notes. In the show notes, under what are we not looking forward to in 2025, I wrote Daggerheart, meh. It's fate with Mercer colored paint and a side of Magic the Gathering, because they've got a card element for things. And they have the hope and fear dice system, which really feels like somebody just took fate dice and tried to incorporate it into the standard polyhedral dice system. And it involves tokens. I think there's way too many like widgets that are involved with it, honestly. And I don't know. I'm having a hard time discerning why I'm supposed to want to use Daggerheart over just running D&D cinematically. And again, I'm not a D&D evangelist. I know I talk about the benefits of D&D a lot, but that's really just practical, because it's so much easier for somebody to get into D&D because there's so much more support and content for it rather than a new system at this point. And I don't understand. I've yet to understand, other than like, oh my God, Critical Role. Like, I don't understand what the draw for Daggerheart is really, when there are other systems that basically do bits and pieces of it. And I don't know if tying them all together is enough for me to switch over to a different system.
Well, that's the draw, right? Is that it's being produced by the makers of Critical Role, and so their whole fan base would ideally gravitate towards that, as opposed to D&D, which they've acclimated to and bought all the books for.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to gravitate to it.
Why
This
not?
is because of like essentially the cost of changing, cost of shifting to another system. It's a cost not only in money but in time, in like sort of probably stress. It probably means you're going to have people who you usually play with who are going to be like, oh yeah, I actually don't want to bother learning a whole new system, so if you guys are going to jump over to that, I'm going to have to bail out of it. It'll probably have, you know, good VTT support after a few months.
Oh yeah, for sure. I bet
Yeah.
they're going to be licensed everywhere.
Yeah, like they've probably got sort of launch deals with places already, like your, you know, your Alchemies, your Foundries and stuff like that. You know, I mean, it's Matt Mercer, so maybe even like D&D Beyond, like as a
Well,
third
it's
party thing on
Darrington
there.
Press specifically, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Darrington Press, but there's so much third party stuff that's showing up on D&D Beyond now. It's typically 5e stuff, or 5e
Yeah.
compatible stuff. But with a name like Matt Mercer, I could see D&D Beyond wanting to maybe get into a partnership with that, maybe. But all that to be said, for me, with the way my life is structured right now, there's not a whole lot that's really drawing me into Daggerheart. I read through very quickly a lot of the Daggerheart beta material earlier this year, probably around like April, because I remember we talked about it a little bit when we were doing panels at Triad Anime Con. So it would have been right around then, like March or April. So one of the things I do need/want to do in 2025 is get the latest copy of the playtest materials and just sit and read through it a little bit more, because it's entirely possible that maybe I'm just not looking deep enough into it, and there's this one twist mechanic or something in there that will change the game entirely, from my opinion. That's certainly possible, because I'm not the smartest man in the world. I don't know everything, but just based on what I know right now, it just feels like its reason for existing is, hey, let's do this. Because I think the idea for Daggerheart also grew out again, you know, of the OGL controversy, because Critical Role was getting hinky about staying on 5e with everything that was going on. And, you know, sort of much like Tales of the Valiant, I am now lost on what the reason for moving to that is. So I don't know.
And Pathfinder never put out their orc corollary, did they?
Oh, you know, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't know, because that sort of fell off for after a while.
I think they
Like,
walked it back after Wizards walked theirs back. So that might have been what happened. What happened? Again, I don't know. So YouTube experts, correct me in the comments that I will not read. Love you.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. I'll have to follow up on that, because you know, I remember Josh and I talking about that a lot, and then we just kind of stopped talking about it, and it seemed like I wasn't seeing it in the news anywhere or any conversation about it. And you know, Paizo wasn't at PAX Unplugged either. So, you know, maybe maybe that says something. There's just, I think just 2024 generally was just kind of a down year for tabletop. Really, like the only big stuff was the D&D 50th anniversary year, and maybe that just sucked the air out of everything. I think I've espoused that theory before, because nobody else really seems to be doing anything exciting.
Well, I think this year was for everyone's production time to catch up, right?
Mhm.
2025 is when we're going to
Yeah,
be seeing the releases for
that's true.
everything that had happened in 2023, because they needed a year to write the thing and develop the thing and get the products shipped and all of it. Daggerheart does look like it is a bit more of a board game experience, so
Mhm.
I'm a little concerned that the amount of additional accessories is going to take away from what they're trying to do here. But you know, I haven't played it either. I'd love to see some gameplay of it and maybe give it a whirl myself before
Yeah,
I come to a definitive
yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, and I do kind of still regret not going to that Daggerheart panel at PAX Unplugged, but it was 2 hours. It was two
You
hours
didn't
long.
have any time, Brandon. That's the
Yeah,
thing. You can't go to panels. We
yeah.
have networking to do.
It was 2 hours long. But what I will do, what I will commit to doing, is watching all the videos for it and then making more of a fine-tooth comb read through all their materials so I can form a better opinion on it. Because I I don't know enough to know if I'm right or not. And hopefully in the next few weeks I can find out, because I think maybe in the first part of the year we need to do an episode really digging into Daggerheart, because it's it's going to come out probably in the next 6 months. I think.
Looks like the core set only comes with the cards and the books, so maybe the tokens, like the crystal tokens, are more of a currency thing, or like just a extra pizzazz, extra sprinkles for your party.
In the book, in the book, when it's telling you like what you need to play, when it starts talking about tokens, it's like just grab anything from around your house as long as you can't confuse it with a die or something like that. So it's like literally like with like troika or something, where you're supposed to use like little tiny stones that you would get from like a Michael's or something like that. They're like, yeah, but also you can just use pennies or whatever the hell you got lying around. Which again, it's like, is it really that necessary to have tokens if they're not so integral that you need to actually like make the tokens and include them with what people buy?
No, but consider you're playing D&D for the first time and you have $150 and you want to spend it for an extra additional bag of tokens, or you just want the collector's edition. Like, I can see people wanting that. Like, I spend way too much money on Kickstarter as it is, just so I can
Right.
get additional 3D printed minis that I'm never going to use, but I get them all the same.
Yeah. I think what you were saying about sort of the widgets and accessories, I think when your system starts leaning too heavily on anything beyond combat miniatures and dice, I think you really need to ask yourself, am I making a system that's designed for storytelling, or am I making a system that's designed to be supported by accessory purchases?
Well, I'm sure Wizards had that same question, but not as fully thought out when they started, right? They started with the rules, and then it turned into adventures, and they turned into books, and then at some point the minis came in. Although I guess theoretically you could say Games Workshop had the minis first, but don't at me in the comments. It's fine.
Well, like if anybody was in a position to sort of trigger a realignment of sort of how we look at what do we need for a tabletop game, do we need lots of extra stuff for it, or can we really like focus on theater of the mind and everything else is optional, Matt Mercer would be that person. But I don't know if he can step outside of himself enough to be able to look at like, oh, here are the changes that I could help facilitate with this project that we're doing. And maybe he just doesn't want to do that,
You can only wear so many hats.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, all of us are human with limited attention spans, right? And
like maybe he doesn't want to be the tabletop messiah, and that's fine.
I would love to do a deep dive with you on your feelings about Matthew Mercer for the next bit.
I really don't have a problem with Matt Mercer. I really don't. I just like the only reason I don't listen to / watch Critical Role is because the episodes are too damn long, and I don't have that kind of time to devote to a single episode of something.
As if your D&D sessions don't take 4 hours.
They take 3. Thank you very much, and that's by design. And I also don't record them and then unedited have people listen through all of them.
Missing out. Look at all that income that you could have passively been making this whole time.
Yeah. So all right. So are we forgetting anything?
I think this year has been pleasantly unsurprising. And as we wait for everyone to take up the throne that Wizards of the Coast has left barren, even with their new 2024 editions, I guess we're just gonna have to wait till next year to see the true victor emerge. Who will it be?
I will say this: if in Hasbro's third quarter report, the highlights to year to date 2024, and this was as of like October 1st, because it's Q3, it's not Q4, obviously. Year to date, Hasbro revenue declined 21%, and that was driven primarily by the divestiture that they had for the E1 film and television portion of the business.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, it was they had a film division, Hasbro did, that was just not. Josh and I did an episode on it like a long time ago where we were talking about some stuff they were
That's
doing.
why I wasn't listening, because it was my predecessor's turn.
Yeah.
No worries.
But yeah, it just wasn't making them any money, and they wanted to refocus on core stuff, so that's why they divested this year. But outside of that divestiture, their revenue declined 7%. Wizards of the Coast and digital gaming grew by 15%. And so you got to think, that includes
Even with their snafu. How interesting.
Yeah, that includes D&D, that includes Magic, and since it's also digital gaming, like that also includes BG3. And
whoa,
yeah,
okay, whoa.
Yeah,
That's polluting our data set. We need to get a BG3 out of there first.
Yeah, off. I was on the I was listening on the second quarter, or no, it was the first quarter earnings call. And they were like, I think they specifically were like, yeah, we're really being buoyed by the Baldur's Gate 3 stuff, but that's a tale that's not going to last forever. Like, I mean, Baldur's Gate 3 is sort of the next Skyrim in terms of longevity. Like, that game's going to keep getting re-released and modded and all kinds of stuff till the end of time. But even with constant re-releases, like the company can't keep riding it. But
no, and once Larian develops a competitor game, like Div 3,
or if Elder Scrolls 6 ever comes out, but the problem there is it's going to be Xbox exclusive.
Don't hold your breath. I would okay, so I know this doesn't have anything to do with TTRPGs, but I came to a realization today after playing Veilguard and hating it. Like, the longer I wait for a sequel to be developed, the more disappointed I'm going to be. So I just have no faith in sequels anymore. Mass Effect is going to get neutered 100%. And if Hasbro has the audacity to try and do a Baldur's Gate 4 in the same fashion and format that Larian adapted it for them, I can only see it failing astronomically. So best of luck, though. Best of luck. That's just my prediction for, I guess, 2028.
Yeah, it'll be the next Starfield. But what I was gonna say, the 15% growth in WotC and digital gaming was offset by the declines in consumer products, which was 20%, and entertainment. If you take their entertainment division and separate it out, it had a decline of 87%, but that was with the E1 film divestiture. It was actually, if you exclude that, it was actually plus 2% for the year. But this has been a problem for Hasbro since like late last year, because their consumer products division is tanking because nobody's buying toys or games or anything. But like the Monopoly app is actually like a huge thing for them right now. It got like it made like $30 million for that.
Yeah,
for the
guys,
company.
just pivot mobile. That's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. But all that to say, the division that D&D is in at Hasbro is actually a growth division. Now, we'll see whether that number drops to single digits or negatives after the BG3 tail runs out. But the beauty of quarterly public financial disclosures is we will get to see in real time when that's happening. So, at the end of January, we'll see how badly the holiday season affected them, and also how much they got from the PHB and DMG releases this year, and how much that buoyed them. So it'll be interesting to look at year over year quarter comparison for that. But anyways, that's good.
I got a physical copy of the Dungeon Masters Guild because I asked my family to purchase it for me because I'm poor. But like, look at this bad boy. Look
that thing is
thick. That is.
That is really. How many pages is that? Was it like 360 some?
I think it's 400. 384. 384.
That's pretty big. That's pretty big.
Comes with a map.
That's pretty great. Is that like the Greyhawk map?
I'll have to tear it out to figure out what it is.
I bet it's the Greyhawk map.
Probably.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm happy with it. I mean, it's a big book. I want to tear into it, make notes on it, and tabulate it because I do that to all my books. But
Yeah. Well, good thing you got it now because, they already raised the prices on the books and I bet they print them in
did they?
China.
Oh, well, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Just based on the map alone, what is it?
I'm pretty sure that's Greyhawk because it ain't the Forgotten Realms.
Can I see it anywhere? Wait. No.
This is both riveting video and audio.
Sorry,
Yeah.
listeners.
Yeah.
Here, I'm gonna rustle the map for you, just so you can be part of it.
Yeah.
Oh, there's stuff on the backside. Here, I'm gonna rustle this one. There you go.
Okay.
It is. Hey, it is. Good. You got it.
Okay. I got it in one.
It's Greyhawk, listener, just in case that wasn't obvious.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to wrap this up because now we're just looking at maps.
Fine.
But yeah, be sure to hop onto the Patreon for the deep dives from this episode where we talk about, looking at G&G's 2025 plans and maybe something else. Maybe it'll be me complaining about the teaser trailer for the new James Gunn Superman movie. At this point, anything goes. But I'll tell you what you need to know, and that is telephone, telegraph, tell a friend about the Goblins and Growlers podcast. Word of mouth is not only the greatest Ludacris album, but it is the best way to get the word out about our podcast. Leave us a 5-star review on your podcatcher of choice. If you're not going to leave us a 5-star review, give us a call, reach out to us on the Discord, tell us what your problem is, and we'll try and correct
us angry comments on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, that is a good way to get me to respond, even if I'm just agreeing with you. And subscribe to the YouTube channel while you're at it. YouTube / Goblins and Growlers. Just get on YouTube and just search for Goblins and Growlers. You'll find us. We'll be the first result. What else?
Well, we were going to talk about cons, but you've already signed off. So I guess only the people who are paying for our premium contents are going to get to hear about that.
No, go ahead.
No, you're going to give it to them for free? Brandon, that's not how this works.
You got to buy the cow. All right.
We're looking forward to seeing you all. We're going to be out at MagFest coming up in January, where it should be a good time. Brandon is not coming because he is abstaining this year, but that is fine. If you have any complaints for Brandon, feel free to leave them with me, and I will shove them in his face the next time I see him.
Yeah, if anybody who's listening to this who's listened to this for any period of time knows why I'm not going to MagFest. But also we'll be at Ichiban Anime Con January 9th in Concord, North Carolina. We'll be at Triad Anime Con in Winston-Salem in late March. I think it's the 28th. Also looking like at this point we're going to be at Animazement in Raleigh in late May, and then Too Many Games in Philadelphia in late June. And that's really the first half of the year. The back half of the year gets a little bit more complex, but suffice to say, if you live on the East Coast, there's a decent chance you're going to be able to see us.
We're thinking about making tour t-shirts, so if you're interested in that, please do feel free to give us money through our various channels that Brandon aforementioned.
Yeah, you can PayPal us and contact at Goblins and Growlers. We don't take Venmo yet.
Why not?
Josh actually looked into setting it up. It's just the difficulty of setting up a Venmo business account.
All right then.
Yeah.
All right then.
Yeah. All right. Well, check us out on the deep dives. We'll catch everybody later. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Wind chimes.